Okay, so deep in the woods of Fairfax County, Virginia, there's this unassuming little concrete bridge. But it holds a really dark secret. It's actually the epicenter of a legend so bizarre and, honestly, so terrifying that it still haunts the area today. We're gonna dive into the chilling tale of the Bunnyman Bridge.
Yeah, that line right there, that's the cold, beating heart of this entire legend. It's basically a promise, a warning that whatever gruesome thing happened to those rabbits was just a warm up, and that people were next on the list.
So, where does a story this creepy even begin? Well, like all the best horror stories, it kicks off with a place for the forgotten, a journey that goes horribly, horribly wrong, and one person who just vanished. Let's just walk through how this whole thing supposedly started. First, you've got this local asylum that's being shut down, probably for all the reasons you're imagining. So they load the patients onto a bus to move them to a new prison. But, you guessed it, the bus crashes. In all the chaos, the patients just scatter into the woods. Now, here's the kicker. Over the next few days, the authorities track down every single one of them. Well, all except for one. And that right there, that's the question that fuels this whole legend. What in the world happened to that one last patient who just disappeared into the forest? According to the local stories, the answers started to show up in a really, really grotesque way. So, months go by after the crash. The missing patient is pretty much a forgotten detail. But then a series of, well, disturbing discoveries start popping up, and they all point to this dark presence lurking around one specific landmark. And this is the place, the Colchester Overpass. You know, it's just this small, dark, pretty unremarkable tunnel. It's the kind of place that already gives you a little bit of a chill. Little did anyone know it was about to become the stage for the entire Bunnyman legend. The terror started out weird. At first, people just noticed there weren't as many rabbits around. And then, they found them. Dozens of them. Skinned and hung from the entrance of the overpass. It was a clear, horrifying message. But nobody had a clue who or what was sending it. So this is where the story really takes a nosedive into pure horror. I mean, the dead rabbits were a gruesome warning, right? But the legend says the horror didn't stop with animals. Oh no, it was about to turn on people. So, the story goes that a group of teenagers decided to do what teenagers in every horror movie do. They went to the creepy local spot to hang out late at night. And of course, the spot they chose was the Colchester Overpass, the exact place where all those rabbits had been found. And this night, this event was the legend's turning point. As the clock supposedly struck midnight, the teens were attacked. They met the same exact fate as the rabbits. And from that night forward, the Colchester Overpass would be known by its much more sinister name, Bunnyman's Bridge. Now, you might be thinking, okay, this is just an old ghost story, some campfire tale. But the thing is, the legend didn't just stay in the past. Decades later, long after all this was supposed to have happened, two incredibly bizarre and terrifying encounters brought the Bunnyman roaring right back into the present. And these modern encounters were chillingly specific. You had one incident where a couple parked near the bridge, heard yelling, and suddenly their back window gets smashed in. They sped off terrified and saw this big white figure just watching them go. Then, just 2 weeks later, a security guard sees a man in a full-on white bunny suit on a porch, holding some kind of weapon and screaming at him for trespassing. After those two sightings, nothing. The Bunnyman just seemed to vanish again. But the legend itself, it was more powerful than ever. So what are we supposed to make of all this? How did this story grow into the Halloween horror staple it is today? So let's just recap how this whole thing evolved, right? It all starts with that one patient who disappears. That mystery then leads to the absolutely shocking discovery of the dead rabbits. From there, the legend solidifies with the horrifying story of the murdered teenagers. And finally, you get the modern sightings, which just proves that this fear is still very, very real for some people. So here's the thing. While there are a ton of different versions of the Bunnyman story out there, and we'll probably never know the absolute truth, there is evidence that someone dressed in a bunny suit was threatening people. And it's that mix of fact and folklore that keeps the myth alive. It's why to this day, people flock to that bridge on Halloween night, waiting for the clock to strike midnight. And that's really what makes this legend stick around, right? The feeling that the story isn't actually over. It leaves us all with one final, pretty chilling question. When midnight strikes on that bridge, who's he going to find trespassing next?